Ever wonder if a single court case could decide who becomes the President of the United States? Well, in the year 2000, that's exactly what happened. The entire nation, and indeed the world, held its breath as the Supreme Court was asked to settle one of the most intense political battles in American history. The question was simple, but the stakes couldn't have been higher. Would George W. Bush or Al Gore be the next leader of the free world? This wasn't just a legal drama. It was the story of how a handful of judges, a few hundred votes, and some tiny pieces of paper called hanging chads would determine the course of a nation. The stage was set on election night, November 7th, 2000. As the results poured in, the race between Republican George W. Bush and Democrat Al Gore was unbelievably tight. It became clear that the winner of the presidency would be determined by a single state, Florida. The initial count in Florida showed Bush with a razor-thin lead, so narrow that it triggered an automatic machine recount under state law. After that recount, Bush's lead had shrunk to just a few hundred votes out of nearly 6 million cast in the state. We're talking about a margin of less than 1/100%. The presidency was hanging by a thread. This is where things got really complicated. The controversy centered on the ballots themselves. Specifically, the punch card ballots used in some Florida counties. Voters were supposed to punch a hole next to their chosen candidate's name. But sometimes, the little piece of paper, the chad, wouldn't fully detach. You had hanging chads, swinging chads, and pregnant chads, where the paper was just indented. Did these count as votes? If so, for whom? The machines couldn't read them, leading to thousands of undervotes ballots where no presidential vote was recorded. The Gore campaign believed that a manual hand recount of these ballots would reveal the true intent of the voters and give him the victory he needed. So, Al Gore's legal team formally requested manual recounts in 4 specific, heavily Democratic counties: Broward, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Volusia. They argued that only a human eye could fairly determine a voter's intent on those ambiguous ballots. But the Bush campaign saw it differently. They immediately sprang into legal action to stop the recounts. Their argument was that a manual recount process was inherently flawed and unfair. Different counties were using different standards to decide what counted as a vote. One county might count a hanging chad, while another wouldn't. They argued this violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, because a voter-s ballot in one county was being treated differently than a voter-s ballot in another. This wasn't a recount, they claimed. It was a revote, created from scratch. The legal battle escalated at lightning speed. It became a frantic race against the clock, with state and federal deadlines looming for certifying the election results. Lawsuits were filed, courts issued conflicting orders, and the Florida Supreme Court got involved, extending deadlines and trying to set standards for the recounts. The whole country was glued to their televisions, watching images of election officials holding ballots up to the light, trying to divine the voters' intent. The political rhetoric was fiery, with both sides accusing the other of trying to steal the election. It was a chaotic, confusing, and deeply partisan fight that was tearing the country apart. The legal tug-of-war eventually landed on the steps of the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, styled Bush v. Gore, on an emergency basis. The central legal question before the 9 justices was this: did the manual recounts ordered by the Florida Supreme Court violate the U.S. Constitution? Specifically, did the lack of a single, uniform standard for counting the votes across all counties violate the Equal Protection Clause? The Bush team argued yes, asserting that treating votes differently based on location was fundamentally unfair. The Gore team argued no, claiming that the standard being used, the intent of the voter, was a long-standing principle in Florida law, and the best way to ensure every valid vote was counted. The stakes were astronomical. If the court allowed the recounts to continue, Gore might win. If they stopped them, Bush would become president. The future of the presidency was now in the hands of 9 judges. The oral arguments were intense, with the justices peppering both sides with tough questions. The nation waited on edge for the final word. Then, on the night of December 12, 2000, 35 days after the election, the decision came down in a deeply divided 5-4 ruling. The Supreme Court sided with George W. Bush. The majority opinion found that the Florida recount scheme was, in fact, unconstitutional. They agreed that using different standards in different counties to count votes did violate the Equal Protection Clause. While they acknowledged that a constitutional recount could theoretically be conducted, they also noted that there was no time left to create and implement a fair, uniform standard before the federal deadline for selecting electors. Therefore, the court ordered a stop to the manual recounts. With no more recounts possible, the previously certified results stood. George W. Bush had won Florida by 537 votes. The court's 5-4 split was highly controversial, largely falling along ideological lines. The 4 dissenting justices wrote scathing opinions, arguing that the court should have allowed the Florida Supreme Court to resolve the issue under state law. Justice John Paul Stevens famously wrote, "Although we may never know with complete certainty the identity of the winner of this U.S. presidential election, the identity of the loser is perfectly clear. It is the nation's confidence in the judge as an impartial guardian of the rule of law." The decision to intervene and effectively end the election was one of the most polarizing moments in the court's history. The next day, Al Gore conceded the election, stating, "While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it." With that, the chaos was over. George W. Bush was officially the president-elect, and he would be sworn in as the 43rd President of the United States. The aftermath of *Bush v. Gore was profound and long-lasting. The case sparked a furious national debate about the intersection of law and politics. Critics accused the Supreme Court's conservative majority of making a partisan decision to install a Republican president. Supporters defended the ruling as a necessary intervention to uphold the principle of equal protection and prevent a constitutional crisis, regardless of which side you were on. The case left an indelible mark on American democracy. It led to widespread election reform efforts across the country, with many states moving away from punch-card ballots to more reliable electronic voting systems. It also raised fundamental questions about the role of the judiciary in settling political disputes. Can and should judges have the final say in who wins an election? The case became a permanent fixture in law school textbooks and a cautionary tale for future elections. So what's the ultimate lesson from this incredible saga? *Bush v. Gore serves as a powerful reminder that our democratic process, which we often take for granted, can be incredibly fragile. It showed that the fate of a nation, the outcome of a presidential election, can hinge not just on the millions of votes cast, but on legal interpretations, court rulings, and the judgment of a few individuals in black robes. It proved that sometimes, the battle for the White House is fought not on the campaign trail, but in the courtroom. This single case didn't just decide one election. It reshaped our understanding of the relationship between votes, courts, and power in America. The story of *Bush v. Gore is a gripping chapter in American history, full of drama, conflict, and high-stakes legal maneuvering. If you found this dive into one of the most famous trials of our time fascinating, make sure to follow my channel. We'll be uncovering more landmark cases and pivotal moments where the courtroom shaped the destiny of nations. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.